Brent, we have the trusty Camry behind us, and you know that can only mean one thing. It's our second passenger car touring tire test of the year.
Yeah, and based on some comments from our last touring tire test, this test has a lot of products people are gonna be really excited about. Our last test, 2024 Test 4, had 10 kind of mid-tier touring products. This test has 11 premium touring tires in it.
Yeah, and of those 11 products, 9 of them are Grand Touring. 6 of those are all-weather. That includes the brand new Goodyear Assurance Weather Ready 2 and the brand new Vredestein Quattrak Pro Plus. The other 2 tires are standard touring, and there's another new product there. That's the Continental True Contact Tour 54, and of course we threw in the consumer favorite, the Michelin Defender 2.
Yeah, and those standard touring products focus on delivering the maximum amount of mileage, but they still have to do the other touring tire things well, which is wet traction, light snow traction, and of course on-road ride and noise comfort. And that's where our testing begins.
We're here on the road ride on Bridgestone Turanza Quiet Track. It is one of 2 Bridgestone tires in this test. This one is the non-Three Peak Mountain Snowflake branded version. So it's all season as opposed to all weather as the Three Peak Mountain Snowflake branded touring tires are commonly known. Ride, it's cushioned over big bumps, or relatively well cushioned over big bumps. It doesn't control body movements quite as well as some of the other touring tires in the test.
Yeah, there is a little bit of secondary motion. You know, after you hit the bump, it hangs on for longer than it should. Just a little bit, just a hair, yeah.
Well, noise comfort is pretty similar in that regard. There are some tones, there's kind of distinct noise, especially over any kind of coarse surface.
It picks up the coarser, you know, the textured asphalt, the cross-cut concrete a little more than some of the tires in the test. Yeah.
One place that it does, you know, stand out or stand amongst the best in the test is steering, though.
Yeah.
The responsiveness compared to really a lot of the tires in this test, it responds very quickly to inputs. There's no really like dead spot, and it feels pretty natural and almost kind of sporty. Almost kind of, yeah. Bridgestone Weather Peak. It is Three Peak Mountain Snowflake branded, so that's commonly known as all weather in the industry.
The Weather Peak is compliant over the big bumps, but it lacks a little more motion control than even its all-season counterpart. Just smaller, especially repetitive bumps. Yeah, it strings them together and just feels just kind of loose everywhere.
What do you think about noise?
Slightly more elevated, perhaps, than some of the more premium, real high-end, you know, Grand Touring tires out there today that we've tested.
I'm behind the wheel, so I'll talk about steering. Feels like a little bit more of an effort or more input before it starts responding. It doesn't respond quite as sharply as a lot of the other products here.
Unfortunately, you're right.
This is the Continental True Contact Tour 54. This is the first of the 2 standard touring all-season tires that we have in this test. They tend to focus more on longevity, on delivering the maximum tread life. It just did what it's supposed to do and kind of didn't differentiate itself in any way.
It's a standard touring tire. Punching it out with Grand Touring tire.
Right?
I mean, that's commendable.
That is, absolutely, because if you're gonna get, you know, 80,000 miles or whatever the case may be out of a tire, you don't want it to be an unpleasant 80,000 miles.
I know. So yeah, noise from the Continental is kind of similar to the Quiet Track in a sense, that it did create a little bit of kind of a resonance. It kind of picks up on the coarser surfaces. Kind of like,
particularly, yeah, in this surface right here. Yes.
Yeah, and this cross-cut concrete on the highway at 65.
I tell you what, one place that it stands out or does kind of differentiate itself is steering. Yes, the third criteria. It just points, it's in lockstep with what my hands are doing. It feels good. Like here on this off-ramp, it's just putting the car exactly where I want it to. No muss, no fuss. It's good. Goodyear Assurance Weather Ready 2. This is another all-weather tire, so it's Three Peak Mountain Snowflake branded. Tell me about the ride quality, Brent.
Yeah, big bumps are cushioned. It's comfortable. And we were both like, ooh.
Unexpected and a pleasant surprise, you know. Noise, a couple of missteps, you know, nothing major, nothing really significant, but you know, there's a little bit of a growly undertone. I think we were both very enamored with the steering on this tire. It is almost performance tire, kind of urgent and sporty. It is natural feeling. It builds, you know, response with more effort in a sort of a progressive way. It feels really nice. Michelin Defender 2. This is the second standard touring all-season tire in our test.
Right.
This is one of 3 Michelin products. This is supposed to be the longest lasting tire in this test. It's a little firm.
Yeah.
It's not bad by any means. The thing that stood out the most to me, always has when we've driven this tire, is there's a little bit of choppiness, especially over repetitive impacts, right? This is the exact spot that it stands out the most. If you have repetitive bumps, you may notice that. Noise comfort.
It won't compete with any of the real high-end Grand Touring all-season tires in this test or anywhere, frankly. But yeah, no, it's good. It's fine, especially on smooth pavement. It's doing well enough.
On-ramp,
Yes.
onto the highway. What do you think?
Yeah, a little bit of a dead spot, kind of right on center, which is something we've found before. Not bad, probably absolutely fine for standard touring all season, but it's certainly not sporty.
Right, it's one of those things that if you weren't testing a bunch of tires, maybe you wouldn't notice. This is the Michelin Cross Climate too.
Is it?
We have, yeah, it really is. So it's Three Peak Mountain Snowflake branded.
The ride is great. It's firm but well controlled.
What about noise?
I am happy with the noise on this tire. They model every tire, every size to get rid of any kind of weird harmonics and to blend everything together. And it really does a good job on this tire. The steering is what we've found in past experiences as well.
It is pretty quick to respond. It doesn't require a whole lot of input or a whole lot of effort to elicit response from it. We've always wanted a little bit more, dare I say it, on a car with electric power steering, a little bit more weight or resistance to inputs.
The Michelin Primacy Tour AS.
The third of 3 Michelin touring tires in this test. So what space does that fit in? We are assuming it's supposed to be the most comfortable, the most comfort-focused tire in the test.
And it's good.
It's good, right?
Comfortable. It's kind of taut. You kind of feel more of the undulations, more of the smaller cracks. It's a firm-based touring tire.
Noise, I'm gonna take noise because I love talking about the good stuff. Let's start with the best characteristic. On any kind of smooth pavement, it's nearly silent. It is so good. Nothing that the tire is doing is louder than the engine noise, the wind noise, or the conversation from your co-driver. This is a smooth surface, so Brent just wanted to not hear the tire. What do you think about steering?
Oh, I sound like a broken record. It's similar to the Defender 2, though.
It feels like it's from the same family.
No, it's a little dull right on center, and then you kind of give more input and it ramps things up.
On the highway, it felt like it was moving just a little bit, yeah. Yeah, it doesn't have much self-aligning torque when, passing through corners.
It wasn't obvious. It was just like,
Right.
I feel like I'm having to do just a little bit more.
Pirelli Cinturato Weather Active. This is the all-weather component, the all-weather half of the Pirelli pair that we have in here. Ride quality is not too pointy, very well composed.
Soaks up the real small stuff, like, yeah.
Stuff, rounds over the big stuff.
Yeah.
Like noise comfort is in a similar boat.
They really worked their magic with this one. It's solid here on the road. I'm impressed.
Yeah, the steering's really good too. It is responsive, not like performance tire urgent, it doesn't feel like it's trying to be sporty, but it just gives you what you want in a natural and expected and intuitive way.
I wanted to say that word.
Feels natural.
Extremely natural. Yeah.
Right? It's just right for a touring tire. This is the Pirelli P7 AS Plus 3, and this is the second of 2 Pirelli products.
Yeah. Both Grand Touring all season tires.
Both Grand Touring all season, right.
Weather active though is just all weather.
Correct. Ride quality from the P7 AS Plus 3, very good.
I'll be a little conspiracy theorist here.
Ooh, I love
it. feels
it.
awfully similar to kind of how the Weather Active felt.
I thought the same thing.
They're definitely in the same family, in the same brand, which
Right.
shouldn't come as a surprise, but
This one's also very good in noise.
after hearing it on the very smooth new asphalt, I expected it to be a little bit quieter on kind of like the mild, just like normal asphalt we have around here.
Right.
But it wasn't. It was a little higher than I would have expected. Maybe.
Steering, you're driving. What do you think about the steering?
Again, kind of similar to the Weather Active, which is good. It's a little fast on center, but it still tracks straight ahead. It feels good. It is a responsive touring tire.
Right. I thought so too. The other Pirelli tire, the Cinturato Weather Active, It doesn't respond quite as quickly to the inputs, but it feels a little bit more natural. Whereas this one, it's less of a steering input to elicit more of a response. This is the Toyo Celsius Sport. It feels like the firmest tire that we've tested. Might even be the firmest tire in this test. Big hits hit a little bit harder than others.
Feel them.
Small bumps, you feel each one. It's still a good ride for a touring tire. It's not objectionable in any way. It's just interesting that we have all of these products and a lot of them are a bit more round and this one is a bit more pointy. You feel stuff. In terms of noise on coarse surfaces, there are a couple tones that you hear. They do blend together, but it doesn't fade to the background as readily as some of the other tires.
There's some interaction with the coarser surfaces, absolutely, yeah. But it's pretty good on the smooth stuff. It does a good job mixing those things together at a decently low volume.
And what do you think about steering as well?
Steering feels sporty for the category in general. Responsive, feels like it has a little bit of weight to it.
I think it's important to note, neither of us scored it higher than the other like best in the test steering type tires. It just feels different. It feels like it has a different focus. It's a little bit more, like you said, sporty or even performance tire focused in the steering feel. Vredestein Quattrak Pro Plus. And this is another all-weather tire, so it's 3 Peak Mountain Snowflake branded. And first off, the ride, I think, is very good. You know, it's about as firm as, you know, most of the good tires on the big bumps. Small things, it actually does a very nice job of eliminating. I will see things in the road and expect to feel them, and they generally are less of an ordeal or less of an event than I had anticipated in my mind. Noise as well.
It did a good job kind of blending the crosscut harmonics, you know, where we get some of that resonance.
Yes.
It did a good job limiting that and kind of blending that into just more like a hushed growl, yeah.
Right? What do you think about the steering on the Vredestein Quattrak Pro Plus?
Well, it's not bad.
It's not bad. And it's
not bad, it's good.
Yeah.
It does respond once you kind of get it off center a little bit, you know, give it some steering input, and it does ramp up response, which is appreciated.
Right.
It tracks nice straight ahead.
And I like the way that it kind of built response with more steering input. Okay, so ride quality, noise comfort, steering, and on-road handling. They're very important characteristics that drivers will have to deal with every day, every time they drive.
Right.
But we also want to find out which tires excel when conditions are less than perfect.
Yeah, so to test them in the wet, we run each tire through 60-0 braking tests, and then we put them around the skid pad in both damp conditions and in standing water to test their lateral traction. Then we put it all together around the track to see how each tire handles those dynamic emergency maneuvers. In our 60-0 braking test, the Michelin Primacy Tour AS delivered a strong performance, standing out from the competition by stopping on average 7 feet shorter than the next in test Pirelli Cintrato Weather Active, which managed to get the job done in 147 feet. After those two front runners, the grouping tightened up around 153 feet, with the standard touring True Contact Tour 54 among them. Its other standard touring counterpart, the Defender 2, was a few feet further, and led the bottom half of competitors, which was rounded out by significantly longer stopping distances by the all-weather Bridgestone Weather Peak. Around the skid pad, Vredestein's Quattrak Pro Plus pulled the highest lateral traction at 3/4 of a G, and only 4/100ths less than the standing water lateral traction test. A rather large group followed 2/100ths of a G back, with the Goodyear Assurance Weather Ready 2 also delivering very good deeper water lateral grip. Once again impressing the team was the standard touring True Contact Tour 54, which managed lateral traction figures close to the group of top Grand Touring products, albeit with some fall-off around the flooded surface. The Cintrato Weather Active and Cross Climate 2 both delivered a capable performance, especially considering their all-weather design. But the Pirelli unfortunately missed our testing in the deeper water. With what felt like limited wet grip once again, the Weather Peak was a couple hundredths behind the Michelin, but maintained competitive grip in the deeper water. Finally, the Defender 2 and P7 AS Plus 3 rounded out the group in wet lateral traction figures for both tests.
Testing on the wet track represents how well each tire uses its objective traction and dynamic capability in combined maneuvers that simulate real-world emergency avoidance. The Celsius Sport, Quattrak Pro Plus, and Assurance Weather Ready 2 were at the top of the charts with sub-34-second laps, a feat that's even more impressive when considering they're all-weather tires. The next group was an appreciable step back, with less than 0.2 of a second separating the Primacy Tour AS, True Contact Tour 54, and Chinchorada Weather Active. The Cross Climate 2 required an additional 2/10 beyond the Pirelli, and the Turanza Quiet Track was on the borderline of what we would consider a good performance. The Weather Peak, Defender 2, and P7 AS Plus 3 all required more than 35 seconds to complete our lap. While we still consider that to be acceptable, they definitely left us wanting more. Like our previous touring tire test, in the dry we're also performing the emergency lane change maneuver alongside the usual lateral traction testing around the skid pad and 60 to 0 mile an hour braking distances. We can get a good idea of a tire's capabilities with just lateral traction and braking, but the ELC helps give us an idea of how a tire puts everything together through aggressive transitions with lots of dynamic force. It's a real-life test for a real-world situation.
All right, Bridgestone Turanza Quiet Track for the emergency lane change. Ready, steady, go. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Oh. You know, it pushes a little bit, but then it recovers and it snaps a little bit.
That's the thing, it understeers and then it quickly oversteers. So it's like, if you get it right, you'll make it about half the time.
Bridgestone Weather Peak. Turn
And understeer.
and understeer and oversteer. Oh wow! So we've passed the emergency lane change zero times.
Yeah.
Do you think I miscounted that?
No.
You want to tally it up again?
Zero.
Continental True Contact Tour 54 and back.
Easy peasy.
That wasn't bad at all. It didn't make it easily, but it made it every time. It
It was every time.
communicates well with you. It's stable, feels urgent, but not like overly urgent. Nicely gets the job done. Okay, Goodyear Assurance Weather Ready 2. In and back. And it's just so easy.
That was easy.
No drama, no excitement for the camera.
It was definitely the driver. It made it every time without issue.
Yep, literally every time we did not fail on this tire. Michelin Defender 2. Oh, I'm nervous. Oh, yeah, okay. I will say I didn't make it through every time.
Didn't either.
I'd say most of the time, but it has that ramp up in steering response. So it's like a little response and then all of a sudden there's too much and then you're coming back the other way and it really wants to step the tail out and it's, again, it
Can be a handful, especially from the rear end. Yeah. Michelin Cross Climate 2. Yeah,
all right.
a little more tail happy.
Yeah, a little tail out
But,
action there. I will say that the front end pushed a little bit, both at that initial input and then when you're coming back the other direction.
It's a touring tire.
Right, it's a touring tire, it's not a performance tire. And then like you said, the tail kind of stepped out of touch, but really wasn't bad. Yeah. All right, Michelin Primacy Tour AS. Nice steering response. And we made it. I would say this has the sportiest steering response of any tire we've tested so far.
Yeah.
The rear axle wants to engage.
Yes.
If you stick with it, it's okay. If you would get nervous and give it some kind of incorrect input, it could be a bit of a handful though. Pirelli Chinchorada Weather Active.
It pushed. It was a little pushy, a little smeary.
And until it slows down enough that the front end grips, and then the rear wants to step out. It's
Classic move.
right.
Yeah, and
Not
all of a
real-
sudden you're sideways and you're not quite sure where you're gonna go.
Yeah, that's a little vague. Not super responsive on the front end. Pirelli P7 AS Plus 3. Hey, okay,
Yeah.
okay. I mean,
I know
steering.
you like this one more than I did.
responsive. Yeah, I do like
It was-
this one more than you do.
It was good. It was good for Grand Touring all-season tire. Front end is a little bit sharper than its all-weather.
Yeah, that's the truth.
Yeah, it doesn't step
But
out.
not as sharp as some in the test.
Certainly not.
Mm-hmm.
This is the Toyo Celsius Sport.
Okay, okay. All right. That was easy.
Would ELC again. That was,
Yeah, 10 out of 10.
wow, it felt good on the front end. The steering felt nice. I mean, I could do that one-handed. I'm gonna do it one-handed.
I don't think you should.
Fredstein Quadtrack Pro Plus. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
you made it that time. Some of the times that I was doing it, I didn't make it. It was kind of really like speed sensitive. If I was just a little bit too fast, it wasn't gonna make it. If my steering input was a little off, it wasn't gonna make it. So it's like 45 is right at the limit for what this tire can do.
Designed to test panic braking in the dry, our 60 to 0 braking results were once again led by the Primacy Tour AS, which brought the test vehicle to a halt in 123 feet. 4 feet further was its all-weather brand counterpart, the Cross Climate 2, and its standard touring counterpart Defender 2 was just 2 more beyond that. The Continental matched the Defender 2, getting in just under the 130-foot mark. The Assurance Weather Ready 2 led a group that all stopped between 130 and 140 feet. And finally, the Weather Peak seemed to struggle with longitudinal grip, finally getting the car stopped in 146 feet. Around the skid pad, the competition was extremely close on the front-wheel drive Camry. With most of the group separated by 0.02 of a G, there wasn't a big variance in objective grip. We did find the Weather Peak once again struggling for grip at the limit relative to the group, and the Cross Climate 2 delivering predictable feel at the limit but trailing the others.
That was a great test with a lot of genuinely impressive tires, and we had a lot of really cool comparisons too. We had standard touring versus grand touring. We had all season and all weather. We even got to look at some tires from the same manufacturers that occupy pretty similar places in the market.
Yeah, but those aren't the only comparisons we're going to make out here today. Like you mentioned, this is our second touring test of the year, but with our new testing protocol, we actually run a common control tire throughout each segment. So this allows us to kind of compare tests, which is something we've never been able to do before.
Right, so when we look at the results from this test, we're going to start with the 11 tires that we tested here. But then we're going to add in the tires from 2024 Test 4, which was our first touring tire test of the year. That's going to allow you to compare the biggest names in the category head to head.
Testing this group on the road effectively reminded us that if you value luxurious refinement, it's hard to go wrong with a premium touring tire. Most of them are just so good at blending a smooth and quiet driving experience with satisfying, sometimes even sporty steering characteristics. Looking at the on-road scores for these tires compared to our last touring tire test, we can see that the top 8 tires in this group scored higher than the number 3 tire from the last test. And that's not to say that the last bunch of competitors were deficient, it just highlights how good this group truly is. Many of the tires in this test delivered strong results in the wet, with the Celsius Sport, Assurance Weather Ready 2, Quadtrac Pro Plus, and Primacy Tour AS at the top of the charts. The Cinturado Weather Active, Cross Climate 2, True Contact Tour 54, and Turanza Quiet Track formed a group of satisfying if not standout performers, while the P7AS Plus 3, Defender 2, and Weather Peak fell to the bottom of the ratings. In the wet, there was less separation between the groups from our 2 touring tests. When looking at this metric, they were essentially evenly mixed.
When looking at the overall ratings, it was a close race. The top 5 tires were tightly grouped, but the Goodyear Assurance Weather Ready 2 earned the highest combined score. The Toyo Celsius Sport, Vredestein Quadtrac Pro Plus, Michelin Primacy Tour AS, and Pirelli Cinturado Weather Active were all less than 1/4 of a point separated from the top spot. A tiny step back, and still within 1/3 of a point of the leader, were the Pirelli P7AS Plus 3, Continental True Contact Tour 54, and Michelin Cross Climate 2. The Bridgestone Turanza Quiet Track was where we just began to see some appreciable separation, and the Michelin Defender 2 and Bridgestone Weather Peak round out the group. When we consider the full picture of warm weather performance between our 2 touring tire test groups, we see the top 3 from our previous test fit in nicely with the options here. From there, the results are a little lower in the overall hierarchy, but still satisfying and acceptable for the category.
It's really awesome to see all these touring tires compared head to head. Tires in this test all were really good on the road, and frankly, all were pretty darn good in the wet too.
Yeah, and that's extra impressive when you consider that 6 of them are all-weather tires. Generally, on-road refinement and wet traction are direct trade-offs for that enhanced light snow traction. So we're excited to see how things shake out in our winter testing in early 2025.
Yeah, and we're going to do the same thing we did with our winter results as we did out here today. So we're going to compare the tires from this test head to head, but then we're going to add in the tires from the previous touring tire test to really, again, see how they all stack up.
Yeah, it's going to be really cool to see. We're excited about it. We hope you're excited about it. But until then, as always, thanks for watching.